Concord takes off next week. Sony's star child that hoped to springboard off the trend of hero shooters. Instead, it's diving into an empty hole 6 feet deep. I'm Ash Dixon, and this is Ginx News. Oh god, here it comes. 1 week until the inevitable disaster that is Concord, the AAA hero shooter that Sony liked so much they outright bought the developers making it. And there was some logic to that decision. Firewalk Studios was founded by a trio of Destiny veterans, and man, has that franchise made some buck. Obviously, Bungie is going through its own disaster right now, again to Sony's dismay, but there's only so many bad decisions we can talk about in one video, so we'll keep on track. And so came Sony's State of Play earlier this year. Concord was meant to be the grand opening number, the big budget extravaganza that got those pre-order numbers flying through the roof. Instead, everyone was left scratching their heads for the first 5 minutes as they watched the equivalent of Kids Bop Guardians of the Galaxy. What was this? Some new co-op PvE looter shooter? Maybe a first-person sci-fi squad-based RPG? Instead, we all got immediate whiplash when it was revealed to be yet another PvP hero shooter. Like, in hindsight, it's actually hilarious how bad that reveal was, because it was essentially a double disappointment. First, everyone was like, oh great, another goofy ragtag crew in another boring sci-fi setting. And then everyone was like, oh great, another hero shooter in a swamp of hero shooters. It's kind of like that video of that far-right rioter just getting bricked twice. You know, 1 brick, ouch, but 2, you're never gonna recover from that. The final nail in the coffin was when they announced it wasn't going to be free to play. Yeah, it went the Helldivers 2 route of being $40 instead of the standard AAA $70, but telling people they'd have to pay for a product that no one asked for is a rather hard sell. It's why up to this point we basically haven't even talked about the gameplay, because in a way it's irrelevant. It's clear that was how Sony wanted to win people over, as with every pre-order you got not 1 but 5 closed beta codes. That would be a whole lot of codes if anyone pre-ordered, which they didn't. We don't have the numbers on PlayStation, but man, the Steam stats were a sorry sight. Just over 1,000 concurrent players on the first day. And assuming all those extra codes were being used, that's like 200 pre-orders. This clearly sent Sony into panic mode as they quickly opened up that beta to anyone and everyone, and the result? 2,388 people. And the thing is, the game isn't even bad. The people playing it applauded the slick gameplay and the polished heroes. Yeah, it was bogged down by some unnecessary systems and the abilities and maps felt a bit recycled, but it was fun. Then again though, throwing a ball against the floor, ricocheting it off the wall, and then catching it is fun. Seriously, I could do that for hours. So just fun ain't gonna cut it. And when you take a step back and look at the wider landscape, it all starts making sense. Shooters are massively oversaturated, and so are heroes, meaning if you want to succeed, you need a selling point. And looking at other upcoming shooters that people are actually excited for proves just that. Spectre Divide has people hyped because it's a 3v3 where each player controls 2 bodies. It's a gimmick that completely spices up the tactics and the gameplay loop. Then you have Deadlock, Valve's new shooter, which has like 18,000 concurrent players, which, god, that's rather tragic for Concord, isn't it? Getting thrashed by a game that hasn't even been announced yet. Admittedly, Deadlock does seem to just combine a whole load of ideas we've seen a million times in other games, but it has the benefit of being made by Valve, so people will lap it up no matter what. Meanwhile, Concord is over here advertising weekly cinematic vignettes, so you can get a deeper insight into their heroes. Like, what? No one cares about the love child of Star-Lord and Piccolo. Seriously, there's so many great green characters, Sony. Yoda, Shrek, Mike Wazowski, why even trying to compete? They have also trying to lure people in by revealing the post-launch roadmap. Now, as a $40 title, there's no battle pass. Instead, players will get regular updates in the form of seasons. And we can now see that those will include new heroes, game modes, and, as mentioned, vignettes. But it just feels nowhere near enough. After that horrendous initial reaction to Concord, Sony had a chance to pause, rejig it into a free-to-play title, and actually give the game a chance to find an audience. Instead, they've chosen to charge full steam ahead down a track that leads directly off a cliff. Who knows, perhaps they'll make it free to play in a couple of months and the train wreck will grow wings and rise from the ashes, but it feels unlikely. And while we don't know the budget of this game, it's probably in the tens of millions of dollars. A rather tragic start for a studio so clearly full of talent in a landscape where sometimes even success isn't enough to stay afloat. Let me know whether you think Concord has any chance of survival. Perhaps you're one of the few people who've actually played it. Hit me up with your thoughts down in the comments. It's time for the Quickfire Round, and we're kicking off with Nintendo because the Nintendo Switch ain't gonna be with us until April 2025 at the earliest. That's according to GameIndustry.biz's Chris Dring, who claims that no developer he's spoken to is expecting it this financial year. The hope is that it will launch in April or May, but it could be well into the second or third quarter. Yikes. Next up, the unannounced PC version of Red Dead Redemption has been confirmed by the PlayStation Store. According to the blurb, we'll soon be able to experience the epic Western adventures that defined a generation, now on PC for the first time ever. That line has obviously been removed from the PlayStation Store, but it looks like we'll be using our keyboards to traverse Gaptooth Ridge and Cholla Springs real soon. From Rockstar to some indie news now, as Fallout London's Team Folon are launching an indie studio, or at least that's the plan after they're done releasing stability updates for their mod. That will likely be until the end of the year. Fallout London has clearly been a massive success though, so I'm curious to see what kind of original game they end up working on. And finally, did you know that Elden Ring is an esport now? Well, it's not, but sort of is, because someone has just won $4,000 at the $10,000 Shadow of the Erdtree speedrun tournament. Speedrunner Spicy killed all of the Remembrance bosses and Veil the Dragon at level 1 using only DLC weapons in 1 hour, 14 minutes, and 41 seconds, which was almost 2.5 minutes ahead of the runner-up. The tournament was set up by speedrunner Distortion 2, with the prize pool distributed between the top 10 runs. And that's the show! Before I go, I'm gonna quickly plug our Patreon. Ginx Plus is where you can support the show and get access to loads of exclusive content. There's currently a 7-day free trial. Otherwise, please hit that subscribe button, that makes me happy, and do come back on Friday for more Ginx news.